Do you really want to change something? If yes, stay and watch the things ahead, put a like, and subscribe to the channel.
Look at an old photo of yourself, and you might feel like you're staring at a stranger. The smile is familiar, but the eyes seem different, softer, or perhaps more naive. You can almost hear the silence between the moments that photo captured. Our culture frames self-improvement as a steady climb. We imagine it as a process of acquisition, collecting better habits and sudden revelations that eventually add up to a superior version of ourselves. The reality of deep transformation feels closer to a collapse. When your perception shifts, old music stops resonating, and certain jokes no longer land. You start craving solitude because the person you used to be no longer fits the life you're still living. Psychologists call this ego death. It marks the disintegration of the identity you once believed was permanent. It's the point where your carefully constructed sense of self begins to break apart under the weight of your own evolution. We claim to want change, yet we often panic when it arrives. If human growth is the goal, we have to understand why the process feels remarkably like falling apart. This feeling of collapse begins with how we built ourselves in the first place. As children, we didn't prioritize authenticity, we prioritized safety. We learned to read the weather in the faces of those supposed to protect us, smoothing out the parts of our personality that cause trouble. Attachment theory suggests that a child instinctively chooses connection over their true feelings every time. You learned to smile when you were hurt and agree when you didn't, because your nervous system recognized that approval was the key to survival. These early compromises form what Carl Jung called the persona. This is the face we present to the world, a costume stitched together from the expectations of our families and our society to help us navigate civilization. This performance gradually embeds itself into your biology. Every time you suppress a feeling to keep the peace, your nervous system records the cost, carving pathways that make self-denial your default setting. Your brain reinforces these survival tactics with chemical rewards. Every time you successfully please others or earn external validation, you receive a hit of dopamine, strengthening the neural loop that keeps you performing your chosen role. Years of this repetition turn armor into a cage. The mask becomes a second skin, and you eventually lose the ability to distinguish your true face from the performance you've rehearsed since childhood. Society views this as maturity or success, but beneath the rewards of being reliable or efficient, you have essentially perfected a biological prison designed to satisfy everyone but yourself. Predictability is the primary quality society demands from you. Friends and institutions generally reward your consistency because it maintains their comfort zone, even if it requires your stagnation. The breaking point arrives when the sheer exhaustion of performing outweighs the desire for approval. The silence of your mask becomes unbearable, and the identity you've worn for decades starts to suffocate you. This collapse triggers a period of intense loneliness. You begin walking through a life that no longer fits, surrounded by people who only know your disguise. As the old identity fractures, you're left floating in the space between who you were and who you are becoming. Your nervous system interprets the loss of these familiar patterns as a biological hazard. It triggers a survival response, the same panic it would feel if your physical safety were in danger, because it confuses your habitual identity with your actual existence. In neuroscience, this is the process of neural pruning. The brain begins to dissolve old, rigid connections that no longer serve you. What feels like psychological destruction is actually a physical clearing of the landscape, new organic pathways to sprout. By dismantling the survival mechanisms of the past, your brain creates the literal physical space required for authentic responses and resilience to take root. The terrifying sensation of disappearing is actually a shedding of adaptation. You are letting go of layers that were never yours to begin with, even if they are the only things you've known for years. Enduring the destruction of a survival mask feels like a funeral. You have to grieve the person you are forced to be before you can inhabit the space they left behind. Rebuilding requires you to stand in the silence rather than rushing to fill it with a new disguise. Transformation lingers in the ruins because you have to learn how to exist without the armor of approval. This leads to integration, the process of reuniting with the parts of yourself you once exiled. You stop trying to destroy your anger or your fear, and instead start learning their language, treating them as messengers rather than enemies. When you respond to pain with awareness instead of avoidance, you actively rewire your brain toward resilience. Each moment of sitting with discomfort builds a foundation of self-trust that doesn't rely on anyone else's permission. You eventually reach a state where stability means being rooted enough to bend without snapping. You move from the rigid stillness of a mask to the flexible strength of an authentic self. While common wisdom suggests we should climb toward a better version of ourselves, transformation demands the opposite. It requires a descent into the quiet truths you buried. This process replaces the pursuit of perfection with the slow realization of wholeness. Beneath the layers of adaptation, the original version of you, the one who trusted their own instincts, remains accessible. You aren't inventing a new identity. You are unearthing the one that existed before you were taught to hide it. The internal collapse provides the heat necessary to burn away the false self. This destruction is the price of entry, a necessary fire that reveals the core that survived the burn.